My name is Loretta Sarro.
And my job?
I'm a public information officer for the Delaware Office for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing under the Division of VOC Rehabilitation in Wilmington, Delaware.
So, tell me about when you were a little girl.
First thing, I was not aware of the fact that I was deaf. I wasn't identified or labeled as deaf yet. And I struggled to, because I had two older brothers who were hearing, and I'm the third child. And my sister's the baby. And couldn't figure out, like my mom said she would try to tell me, but tell me stuff, but I was always so quiet. And I went to kindergarten in school, in a hearing school. And at that time, my parents were looking for a deaf school. And they found one in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, there were 3 at that time, deaf schools. The first one was very strong in deaf culture and signing. The next one was private and spoken language, meaning it was, you learned to speak, because we weren't allowed to sign at that time. And the third one was signing and speaking. So my mother chose the one that was just speaking. My mom told me I'm going to a new school. I had no idea. We arrived at the school. It was a very long drive. And the nuns were standing outside. And Mom said, "This is your new school." The words across the thing was deaf. "You're deaf." And I still didn't understand what she meant. So I went into we went into the lobby where all the kids got off the bus. We went in and they're allowed to sign before the start of class. So they were signing and I was just looking around and I didn't know what they were doing with their hands. A week later, 2 weeks later, I was like, oh, some have hearing aids. And I started to pick up some signing. I was 4 years old at the time when I started to sign. Not ASL, it was English sign. And that's how I been identified as deaf, how I grew up.
And her father drove her every day?
No. You arrived to school Monday morning really, really early. At that time, 1962, there was no I-95 or I-495 at the time, so you had to drive through to get to Philly. Pretty early, you had to get up. Drove. I felt like it was a long time. I felt like it was 2 hours, but really it was only an hour drive. And I already memorized the route on how to get there. The University of Pennsylvania, the stadium was there. So I already had the route memorized. And then they would come pick me up on a Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. My father had off on Fridays from work for 5 years before I transferred to Delaware School for the Deaf in Newark.
And tell us about Stirk.
Okay. When I transferred, Stark School, that's the former name, Margaret S. Stark, for hearing impaired. That was the formal name. And they already built it, but it wasn't ready to open yet. So we had to use the hearing school, 4 classrooms that were available in the hearing school temporarily. So then we went in. I think I started with, at least with one other student. Continued through there, and a lot of changes happened, and then communication access changed. But my time period, it was total communication, meaning you spoke language. My mom was very strict with my speech. She requested me to go to speech class, speech therapy, 2-3 times a week for 10 years. Ugh.
So, were you at Stirk for 10 years? How old were you when you left Stirk?
Before my 19th birthday.
And then what did you do?
I went to college, a National Technical Institute for the Deaf in Rochester, RIT, technological, oh my God, I'm not saying it right, technological. There wasn't a lot of fit for jobs out there because I already did some research, so I changed to accounting and to office practicing. They were combined together. I graduated in 1982.
So, what was Stirk like when you started there?
Well, the students were very interesting. They were from various different places. Because of that time, there was really no deaf school before 1968. And the kids, you know, they were in Maryland School for the Deaf, PSD, Pennsylvania School for the Deaf. And there was a third one that I can't remember the name. Some were here. It was regular school without a program. One small program in Wilmington called Boer School. All the students had various communication needs, but we still all understood each other. It was really an amazing experience. And I knew some sign, but some kids weren't signing at all. But they picked it up quickly, and I picked it up quickly as well. Then the principal decided to set up signing. And all the teachers, some were familiar with deaf background, some weren't. I mean, like special ed. Later, they started hiring 4 deaf staff. Then after that, the deaf staff became increasingly, it growed increasingly.
And were you in the first graduating class?
No. The first graduating class was 1973. That was the first class to graduate. I'm 1978.
And you grew up near there, right?
I'm sorry?
She grew up near there?
Yeah, about 3 miles on the school bus. When I became older, like when I was 16, and when I had sport activities, I would drive. I wouldn't ride the bus, and I would stay after school with sports.
And what sports were you involved in?
Softball, girls basketball, and cheerleading for the boys basketball.
That's pretty neat. What about your mother's involvement in PTA?
My mom was wonderful, but she advocated very much. What was the best? Not just but for me, but for students. What's the best? Of course, it was a battle. Different parents had different perspectives. Mom did the best she could because, you know, it was just the starting of figuring out how to raise, to order materials, to work very hard until I graduated.
And did your sister want to learn sign?
I have 3 brothers, 2 sisters. One of the sisters, I was 14 and she was 4. She heard Mom say during dinner time, you know, dinner time discussion, Delaware School for the Deaf offers sign language classes for parents and families. My mom was not happy. But I supported it, but my mom didn't support it. My sister heard the conversation and she said, I want to learn. And Mom was like, And she looked at me and I just, you know, she wants to learn. Okay. So she went to the sign classes, only 1 class. After that, she was done. I told my sister, don't worry, I can teach you. So we practiced with each other not full fluently, but a little bit because of the difference of the ages between us. I was soon leaving to go to college and she was just soon going into high school.
And does she sign today?
Yes.
And what about Roy Holcomb?
Roy Holcomb, he was hard of hearing. He was the first deaf director. He was the director and principal that was deaf. And they signed, and we just were like, wow, the principal? You're deaf? I was very impressed. My mama, she was, but I was very happy. To show that, you know, it's the ability. That impacted me. The ability to do. It was a very good program. They did lots of modifications. It was much better than the first 2 years. I think it might have been about 4 or 5 years. And then the new principal came, a new director came.
And he was able to speak?
Yes, he was a hearing man. He signed, though. He taught at the School for the Deaf. He moved around up the ladder, and then he became the director of Delaware School for Deaf. His philosophy, I don't agree entirely. There's some things, but there's other things that no. The things that I disagree with is the signing of communication mode. His philosophy is you're not allowed to sign ASL. You have to sign SEE. That's a little bit different than ASL. ASL and SEE are 2 different entities. SEE is hard to get the concept of the signs. My mom supported it, but I disagreed. We had different perspectives.
But it's like learning a whole new language.
First of all, I never heard of SEE, and then I figured, the teacher explained it. He was an English teacher, and they explained it to me what SEE meant. It's proper words. For example, I am going to the movies. ASL is, I'm going to the movies. ASL is already included in the grammar because my finger, I went. My finger is the verb, I'm going. It's a different structure.
So like,
SEE has no expression. It's very hard. ASL already has the facial expressions, the body movement. Because hearing people can hear the intonation, deaf sign and our bodies, the movements. I was excited to go to the movies. You can't hear my voice, but deaf people are like, oh, I'm going to the movies. It's the same thing. SEE is very hard.
and what do you speak now?
ASL.
Yeah. Did it impact your school homework and understanding in class?
In Philadelphia, I already picked it up. The teacher was very strict there, but they were understanding of deaf language. It was hard to understand English structure, but he explained it very clearly. And when I transferred, that teacher, the background wasn't familiar. I always told Mom, we need new teachers. The English teacher, we need an English teacher, because I was just, telling Mom how I felt, expressing all my concerns. And then they finally changed out. But he had to follow the hearing principle. But Roy, he explained things. And this teacher he was all right. Middle school was good. Then high school was just okay. But I understood the structure by then, and Mom decided to hire a tutor for reading and English. That tutor had a deaf sister. Her concepts, wow, they were perfect. That's what I was looking for. To write English, and then to read, and then to read with sign. And then I was signing English, and she was like, no, just sign normally. And I said, I don't know how. And she was teaching me, and then I finally understood the verbs and just picking up the language with reading, just picking everything up and moving on up, improving. That's the reason why I went, my goal was to go to college.
And you majored in photography first?
Yes, that was my first year, yes. You were required to take different abstracts. Then I researched for the summer. During the winter time I did this for the summer jobs. And then I realized that's not what I'm looking for. So I decided to sit with the college counselor and have a discussion, and we both came to an understanding. My math was pretty good, so we changed my major to accounting, and I decided to add office practices because college is technical. So the computer with accounting, doing all that, practicing typing and with paper and printing, and it wasn't just only, accounting's not just one thing, it's a bunch of things together, and I was able to find a job. So it was both.
And what did you do in the summer times?
Not much. No, went to Grandma's house pretty often. And because of communication barriers, I was struggling with that. I wanted to do something. I was so thankful for my cousin. She was so close. We were so close. She would invite me to go. She would come to us and stay and keep me company. My sister and I, my sister refused to learn to sign, so we weren't really close. But as I got older, when I was 15 years old, I finally decided. I looked at my older brothers, and they both have summer jobs. They were 14 and 15. I asked Mom, I said, Mommy, I want a job. I'm 15. I want a job, like my brothers, like the two brothers. Mom said, okay. Mom called DSD, Delaware School for the Deaf, to see if they had any type of job programs. They didn't have one, so Mom called my sister's high school, St. Mark's High School, then applied for different things, and that was funny. We got the letter. It said family court. I don't know what that meant, so we opened it. I was reading too fast. It says family court. What am I going to do in family court? I know what family court means, yes, but why would they send this to me? Mom said, oh, read the top to the bottom. Okay, so I read, oh, summer jobs. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to work in family court? Okay, I accepted it. We called. Okay. Dad taught me how to ride public bus. I practiced and practiced for a week before I started my job, and that was funny. Dad wouldn't say anything as to where to go. Pay attention, he would say to me. But I was too busy taking everything in, and my dad said, no, pay attention to where you need to go. And then we passed it, and my dad said, you were supposed to pull the buzzer. Oh, I didn't know there was a buzzer. Yes, you pull it. Look at the people. You're not paying attention to what the people are doing. No, I'm not. So finally realized I had to pay attention from there on out. So I do the bus, and it was right there. You go in and just, that was the first day. The paperwork, filing, and then the judge came, and I looked him up and down and was like, wow. That was interesting.
And how long were you there?
2 summers, 1975 and 1976. And then the following summer, I worked with Dad at the dentist's office in his business. And then that was for 2 summers with Dad. And then while I was in college, I worked 1 summer at DuPont Company in Wilmington. And then after that, oh yes, earlier, after graduation, then there was nothing. I couldn't find a job. Then I asked VR to help me, just for temporary. I was looking for temporary, and it wasn't a restaurant, it was like a deli, a small deli, a small shop. So okay, fine. Every morning I worked there, then they asked me to continue on through, fall and spring, and I said, okay, so I'll stay. And then DSD said they needed volunteers, but you wouldn't get paid. So I said, okay, I went and I helped volunteer. And then I found a job.
And what was it?
Delaware Department of Transportation in Bear. Highway Division. I worked on all the different kinds of contracts, make sure I was checking everything was perfect, everything jived with the contracts, with the federal government, with the state, related to roads, and they were from different construction companies who did all the work. And then you'd give it to the supervisor, and then they'd approve it, and then they would send it to Dover headquarters.
Did you have an interpreter with you the whole time?
No, I didn't need an interpreter. I wanted to be challenged to communicate. I wanted to try to break the communication barriers where the breakdowns were. My team, they were really awesome. They would write to me back and forth. Remember, there was no computers back at that time. That wasn't, it's not like today. There was no IMs, no email, so we had to handwrite everything and show the paper. A few other people asked me, this doesn't match. That's what the contract says. We had a deaf man who worked there as well. And the people would ask me to explain to him. I'm not an interpreter. No, it'd only be 5 minutes. Okay, so I'd go over and I'd say, what do you want? You explain to him this, okay. I go back to my office. That I did for 9 years, 9 months. I did that job before today's current job.
And you're still at Del Dot?
I'm sorry?
Is she still at Del Dot?
No.
Where is she now?
Delaware Office for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing.
And how long?
Since 1993. It ended with Del Dot February of 1993, and then March 1st of 1993, I started working with my current job today.
That's cool.
So a total of 32, 33 years.
Pretty impressive. So, were you involved in the beginning of ADA?
How that started was my high school years. The history teacher himself was deaf, and he was from Scotland. And he moved here to America. He went to Gallaudet University to become a teacher, and he just happened to find a teaching job at Delaware School for the Deaf. What are you interested in? He asked us. He had an idea, bring the newspaper in on a Friday, and we were like, newspaper? For what? What? Well, what do you think? What impacts your lives with this newspaper? And that's how he said it. What impacts your lives? Like, as a deaf person, what impacts my life? I didn't know. Then later, the National Junior Society of the Junior NAD for high school students only. It's on the national level. It wasn't clear what that specific agency was. Are you interested in wanting to go to the National Junior Conference in Tennessee? Yeah, I'm interested. So 2 of us went with him, with the staff, the deaf person. We had another teacher, but they couldn't make it, so we went with this deaf person. Wow. That's where it all started. The advocacy is where it started. Not the ADA, but general advocacy. Oh. The trainers there, what are your rights? What do you mean, rights? Your school doesn't explain what your rights are to you? So they explained it and expanded and made me see a whole different light. The next year was 1976. Oh, no. 1975 was the hearing conference, and I was observing everything, called Close Up Conference in Washington, D.C. That's where the political was, in Washington, D.C. Many senators, legislators from the U.S., and I was just like, wow, how can I approach them? But the other conference in Tennessee is what helped me connect the two. Then I found out after graduation, DAD, the Association for the Deaf, it's affiliated with NAID. I became a member, and they kept me sending, different papers on rights, and it really impacted me a lot. Where do I fit in here? Where are my needs? Where would I go from there? Then I became president. I happened to receive, and some other people received letters as well. Anyone interested to DAD the meeting? I was present at that time. Is anyone interested? Want to go to the delegate. Nobody. I said, so I will. Went to American School for the Deaf up in Hartford, Connecticut for the weekend, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And they talked about how leadership training program. Then that was really 20 participants, 4 regional. There was 4 regions. They picked 5 from each region, and I was one of the 5 that were picked because both trainers, some people weren't paying attention, and I was really paying attention. The first day they said, promise, commitment, you'll come on time. Discussions, we're going to stick to the bullets of the discussion, and that was for the whole 3 days. They decided to pick me, one of the 5. It was 2 weeks later, I went to D.C. at Gallaudet, and all 5 delegates from each region were there, and we had the trainer there, and there was a list of different trainers. It said American with Disability Act. That's what the Congress, at that time, it was on that list. And we were all like, ADA? What can you explain ADA? So they explained it, and we were like, oh, we're picking that subject. For 1 week, we worked on homework and just everything. There was already a draft from the ADA that they gave to us, and we were reading through. What do you think? Is there missing things? Then it was required to have an appointment with the senator or the House of Representatives, and I did contact the House of Representatives, but both of them were not there. So then I finally met the senator, Tom Carper. I met with him with a friend from another state, and we discussed about the ADA. I read it, I explained to him, and I really supported this. It'll expand better, but I really want to vote on this. It's a benefit for us, for deaf people as well as other disabilities or people with disabilities. Okay, it was a very brief 10-minute meeting. July 25th, I believe it was, July 25th. That day, the President Bush signed the bill. Just prior, I met, and then boom, they signed it, and they supported the vote, and they passed it, and then they gave it to President and signed it, and that's.
And has it made a difference for the deaf community?
Some improvement. Some we're still working on. Closed captioning's getting a little bit better. Job employment, we need tons of improvement. That's not, it's slowly. Employment means promotions as well. Because people have already had college degrees, they have their degrees, they have their internship. But some, they hire some and then some they don't. People who are deaf and hard of hearing had another disability, like wheelchairs. They had needed accessibility. The captioning. Oh, I'm talking about now the airlines. I mean like the airports. You know, listening to the PA systems. We can't hear the PA system. That's a rough one. Some improvement, some not. We're still working on some.
What about going to the doctor?
That's a challenge. Some doctors are not, I'm challenged because some, it's really a challenge. Some won't provide an interpreter. They want us to write back and forth. And I can understand because my father was a dentist and my mother was in the medical field. So I'm pretty understandable with that. And I help volunteer at my father's business. So that helped me understand better. So it's really a challenge. The other two doctors, I require an interpreter.
And how is it different in other states? What about Rhode Island and Kentucky and Missouri and Hawaii, Arizona?
Oh, some states are really good with proceedings so far. It depends on the Office for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, they have different names for each. And it depends on their legislation, what their requirements for their offices to do. Delaware doesn't have legislation for this office, the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. If it's a deaf community and it's strong, there's advocacy there, that's strong, then Delaware. Some are successful in passing to do, like movie theaters with captioning, communication access, museums, improving the interpreting services. Some are doing really well and some not so much. It just depends on what type of deaf community involvement they have. I can't do everything myself. I need to have the involvement of the deaf community. And if I retire from the state, I would stay involved to work very hard to improve it yet.
And what are your job duties in your current position?
Okay, I'm a public information officer. It's pretty limited. Information, referrals, advocacy. The information is not many deaf services here in Delaware, so I have to look up and do research, give information, educate them on how to even request for an interpreter. Some doctors resist and they won't provide an interpreter. Some lawyers, referrals, where the appropriate services are needed, like we can refer them to whatever appropriate service they need. There's not many deaf services here. You have to request for an interpreter. Advocacy. That means it's the person to get their rights. I educate them and I empower them. You're responsible to notify, to explain. Not what the ADA says. Interpreter says provide interpreter, but you have to notify them that you need an interpreter. Yeah, I emphasize that. I try to teach them that. The caption for the telephone, the CapTel program. Recently, a few years ago, they passed so that you can add to the relay services one of the parts. And they add CapTel for the hard of hearing or for the person who can speak. They just might not hear well, but they can speak well. The visor communication cards. To be able, if you get pulled over by the police, you can show them this card, instructions on how to communicate. And educate training. I provide trainings to different areas. 5 years in Newcastle County, training the police there and the students. The City of Wilmington Police recently. Several times elementary schools. Two or three, the bank companies. Oh, no, not the bank company, credit card companies. That's pretty much.
It's pretty impressive.
It's my responsibility. It's a small, but.
It's important. And do you do mostly on computer?
Yeah, research, do a lot of analyzing and reading, update what's going on our level, the NAD, what's their perspective, deaf issues, Congress related to closed captionings or whatever. You have to make sure, I'm making sure I am updated and current. What's going on with like what's available in assistive devices, you know, if that place is closed, if another place is open for assistive devices.
And do you go over to Legislative Hall and to Congress to talk?
No.
Not allowed to with your job?
I don't have the authority.
It's too bad.
If they ask me, I can answer them, but I'm not allowed to go there first.
It's too bad. What about partners in public policy?
1994 or 95. From January to June, once a month on a Saturday. Saturday, Sunday. No, Friday, Saturday. I'm sorry. I learned a lot. The funny thing is, when I started working at the Department of Transportation, the state government agency, but I didn't understand the system for the state. I didn't get it, but okay, I worked, in transportation, paperwork. Then I went into that program, the Partnership of Policy Making. They had different presenters. I was like, oh, huh. They were almost like me for the deaf leadership training prior to that. It was almost the same, but they were very intense, related to the state level here. What happens here? What's available for people with disabilities, people with hearing, deaf, whatever. And I just took it all in, VR, Department of Labor, Department of Health Services, getting a better idea on how it opened. When the program was finished, I went back to my supervisor and I said, this Department of Transportation, what is its protocol? What is formal protocol? So she explained and I said, oh, that's why I give you the paperwork. Oh, it was a little bit different. The Department of Transportation didn't work with people. It worked with companies. When I transferred over to the Delaware Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, you work with people. And I was required to orient the Department of Labor, DVR, what I had to do for them. And I remember the partnership. And now I joined the State Council for Persons with Disabilities. More than 20 years. I've learned so much, and I'm happy that I joined Partners with Policy Training. Oh, wow. We share all the information. We have similar experiences, what we face, the same issues.
So if somebody was going to write your biography, what would you want people to know about you in the future? What kind of, like an epitaph?
How I became an advocate, what leadership is to deaf communities, not overlook, wake up, will advise, it will affect my life, break the barriers, break autism, get rid of the oppression, show that I'm able.
And capable.
Yes.
So if you were going to wave a magic wand, how would you change the current situation?
Wow. That's a tough one. It doesn't solve right away. It's a long way to go yet. I've been watching people with disabilities protest and just everything, and I just, I look I compare it to other states. Other states, the deaf communities, they have a strong deaf community. But right now, recently, grassroots organization just popped up about 2-3 years ago. Other states are involved and they're pulling up their sleeves and getting to work. Hire me. It's not deaf. I have skills. Here in Delaware, only 4 or 5 people showed up. I was working. I'm a state employee, so I couldn't do it. I have to be very careful and stay neutral. So it wouldn't solve. It's not going to be solved right away. It depends. What's the most important thing? I encourage the deaf community, well, I mean the deaf people, to register to vote. It's important. If you register, they will listen to you. If you're not registered, they're not going to listen to you. So
what else? Anything else you want to say for the good of the cause?
I want the deaf community, the people who are deaf, to use sign, and hard of hearing as well. Get involved together. Don't be separated. Don't be united together, to work together. Be on the same page. And what are the issues that you really want to take care of to show to legislation? Both Delaware and United States Congress, both, not just only here. But more work closely with the legislation. We need to have improvement here for the deaf community.
If somebody was going to take a message to Legislative Hall, what legislation would you like to see?
Oh, 2 things. If I wasn't a state employee, I would tell them, increase employment, hire deaf people. Gallaudet graduates, NTID, National Institute for the Deaf in Rochester, New York. They graduated, they're looking for jobs. They have a degree. Hire them. And people from high school, hire them. Increase employment training to help them, to keep them into jobs. That needs to increase. And doctors, private doctors, north to south. I respect the person. Please respect the person. When they request for communication, it's life and death with these people. They need communication. They need to understand what their health issues are. And so many, they're just overlooked. I just had a chat, in the deaf community, the beef and beer party. I was chatting with one person, and they never asked for an interpreter, but they struggle with their health issues. And I said, hey, you need to ask for an interpreter so they can explain better to you. Then you will understand, and then you will follow the doctor's orders. Did you understand writing back and forth? No. Well, you're missing a lot of information. I explained to them, ask for an interpreter. And they're afraid. They're afraid to ask. No, ADA says. My cousin who is deaf, you need to ask for an interpreter. Those are the two things that I would tell the legislative. Increase jobs, hiring deaf people. Hire interpreters. Don't block the interpreters. Bring an interpreter in. Those are the two top things, and here in Delaware.